My hand was shaking as I watched him say his vows to another woman. The pregnancy test I had taken was still in my pocket, its warmth a secret I kept close. 7 months ago, when I told him about our child, he had called me a liar and a manipulator. "You're just trying to trap me," he had said, and his family's powerful company seemed to stand behind him like a huge fortress. He had no idea that as flower petals fell on him and his beautiful new bride, I was carrying the real heir to his family's empire. I quietly left the church with one hand on my growing belly. I was already dialing my lawyer's number. Sometimes the most powerful comebacks are the ones you don't see coming. I sat in the last row of the large church feeling uncomfortable. I pulled my loose navy dress over my belly, which was now 7 months along. The church was filled with huge bouquets of white roses and lilies that must have cost more than what I paid for rent each month. It felt hard to breathe, but maybe that was just the baby pressing on my lungs. The wedding of Michael Vance and Chloe Beaumont was the biggest social event of the year, with security that was tighter than for a president. But I, Sarah Jenkins, was there, even though I hadn't been invited and was obviously pregnant. I was watching the man who had left me marry a woman who was considered his perfect match in society. The church was full of the city's most important people. Politicians, celebrities, and business leaders were all there in their best clothes. I had managed to get in by blending with a group of relatives he barely knew. My old employee badge and an invitation that was no longer valid were enough to get me past the junior security guards. I was sitting behind a stone pillar holding my purse tightly. Inside was the proof that would soon destroy the perfect life Michael had built for himself. The music for the wedding started and everyone stood up. I stayed in my seat, using the moment to catch my breath. Chloe appeared at the back of the church, looking stunning in a designer white dress. Her father, the powerful banker Robert Beaumont, looked proud as he walked her down the aisle. As I watched Chloe walk, my mind went back to the night I first met Michael. His family's company, Vance Enterprises, was having a party to celebrate its biggest project of the year, a new type of building complex that I had designed. I was 28 years old and had just been promoted to senior architect. I was proudly showing a small model of the building when a deep voice behind me said, "You've made concrete look almost beautiful." I was a little annoyed by the comment, so I turned around and saw the most captivating blue eyes I had ever seen. Michael Vance, the heir to the company, was standing there in a perfectly fitted suit with a confident smile on his face. I responded to his comment immediately. "I'd like to see you do better." He didn't get offended. Instead, he laughed, a real laugh that made a few people turn to look. "I deserve that," he said. "Let me buy you dinner to make up for it." That was the start of our romance. A successful architect falling in love with the son of the company's owner. It felt like a modern fairy tale. I wish I had paid more attention to the warning signs. He always insisted on paying for everything. He would make small criticisms about my practical clothes. His compliments always seemed to have a bit of a correction in them. The minister's voice brought me back to the present. "If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." My heart started beating very fast. This was the moment you see in movies where the woman who was wronged stands up, reveals she is pregnant, and everything turns to chaos. My hand automatically went to my stomach, where our daughter, I had recently found out I was having a girl, kicked me, as if she was telling me to say something. But I stayed quiet. Michael didn't deserve a dramatic scene. His new wife didn't deserve to be humiliated in public, whether she knew about me or not. And our daughter definitely didn't deserve to be brought into the world with a scandal. My phone vibrated in my purse. It was a text from my doctor, Dr. Sarah Patel. It said, "Your blood pressure readings from your home monitor are concerning. Can you come in tomorrow instead of Thursday? Come earlier if you can." The church suddenly felt too small and stuffy. Michael and Chloe were exchanging rings now. His voice was strong and clear as he promised to love her forever. The same promises he had made to me in our apartment just 8 months ago. I had come to the wedding thinking I needed to see it happen to finally move on. But as I sat there, feeling my daughter move inside me while watching Michael put on a performance, I realized I had already moved on. The real end was the moment he called me a liar, threw my prenatal vitamins across our kitchen, and accused me of getting pregnant on purpose to trap him while his family's company was having money problems. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said. The church filled with applause as Michael kissed his bride. I used the distraction to get up and walk toward a side exit. My doctor's text was more important than watching Michael's fake smile for another minute. As I pushed the heavy wooden door open, the wedding invitation I had kept as proof of our relationship fell out of my purse. Before I could pick it up, a woman my age, dressed as a bridesmaid, picked it up for me. "You dropped this," she said. She had kind eyes. "Keep it," I said. "I don't need it anymore." The way I said it made her look at me more closely. Her eyes got a little wider when she saw that I was pregnant. "Are you okay? Do you need help getting somewhere?" The genuine kindness in her voice almost made me cry. It had been months since anyone other than my doctor had been that kind to me. "I'm fine, thank you," I said with a small smile. I glanced back at the altar, where Michael was walking down the aisle with a look of victory on his face. She looked at him, then back at me, and a look of understanding came over her face. "I'm Anna," she whispered, and she quickly put a business card in my hand. "Call me if you need anything. Seriously?" I was about to say something when Michael's mother came over. Her eyes narrowed when she saw Anna talking to a stranger. "They're taking photos, Anna," she said, telling her to come without even looking at me. I quietly went out the door and into the bright afternoon sun. The difference between the quiet church and the busy city street was a bit disorienting. A black car, the kind Michael's family always used, pulled up to the curb. I quickly stepped back into the shadows of the doorway. In that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. I wasn't there for drama or revenge. I wasn't even there for closure. I was there to confirm what I already suspected, that Michael Vance was just a handsome man with nothing real behind his image. I didn't need to ruin his wedding to win. All I needed to do was build a life for myself that was so good that his absence wouldn't matter at all. I took out my phone and dialed my lawyer's number as I walked away from the church, away from Michael, and away from a life I once thought I wanted. "Miss Davies, it's Sarah. I'm ready to file everything." I paused. "Yes, all of it. The paternity lawsuit, the wrongful termination claim, everything." I stopped at the corner and watched Michael's wedding guests come out onto the church steps for pictures. "No, I don't need to wait any longer. I have all the evidence we need." I gently rubbed my belly and felt my daughter kick again. It was time for her father to learn that some traps are the ones you make for yourself. 18 months before the wedding, I was in a room with a scale model, making final changes to my architectural design for the Horizon project. My fingers were shaking a little as I moved a tiny tree next to the miniature apartment building. After 3 years at Vance Enterprises, this was my big chance. It was my first major project as the lead architect. "Miss Jenkins, they're ready for you," my assistant Zach whispered. He looked both excited and nervous, just like I felt. I straightened my skirt, checked my blouse for any pencil marks, and took a deep breath. The model looked perfect. The design was new, but also practical, beautiful, and it didn't cost too much. This design could change people's lives by providing affordable housing with green spaces, community centers, and natural light in every apartment. It hadn't been easy to convince the company's board to approve these features, but the numbers showed it was a good idea. The presentation was a huge success. By the time I was done, even Richard Vance, the company's founder who was known for being careful with money, was nodding his head in approval. When the board voted to approve the project, the CEO herself shook my hand and said, "Sarah, you've just made Vance Enterprises a leader in sustainable architecture." The party that night at a popular rooftop bar was amazing. Coworkers who had barely spoken to me before now wanted to talk to me. My best friend Jess kept bringing me champagne and telling everyone, "My friend just changed the world of affordable housing." I laughed at her exaggeration, but I could see the pride in her eyes. "Your friend is being too modest," a deep voice said from behind me. I turned around and was surprised to see a man who was interested in the technical parts of my design. He was tall with dark hair and very blue eyes. He was wearing an expensive suit, but his smile was warm and genuine. "I didn't think Vance executives paid much attention to those details," I said, taking a sip of champagne. They probably don't, he said with a wink. But I'm trying to change that. He held out his hand and introduced himself as Michael Vance. The champagne suddenly felt a lot stronger. I knew the founder's son had recently come back from Europe to work for the family company, but I had never met him. Sarah Jenkins, I replied, shaking his hand, and I know who you are. Yet you're not trying too hard to impress me. That's refreshing, he said, with a smile that made him seem more approachable. He asked me what inspired the rooftop gardens since they weren't the most cost-effective feature. What started as a work conversation turned into hours of talking. Michael knew a lot about sustainable design, and he was surprisingly funny. He told me about how he tried to grow tomatoes on his balcony, but they ended up looking like sad red golf balls. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my drink. By the end of the night, we were the last two people at the bar. We were sitting close together as he showed me pictures of modern architecture from Denmark. When he asked for my number, it felt like the natural thing to do. Our first date was at a small restaurant where the chef knew Michael by name. For our second date, he surprised me by taking me to a community garden in a poor neighborhood. I thought you'd appreciate seeing how green spaces can make a real difference, he said. He was so enthusiastic as we walked through the garden, where children and older people were working together. By our fifth date, I was completely in love with him. Michael was different from the other wealthy men I had met. He really listened when I told him about growing up in a small apartment with my single mother. He would nod thoughtfully as I explained how my childhood made me want to design homes that helped families grow. That's why your designs have so much warmth, he said one evening, holding my hand. You're not just drawing rooms, you're creating homes. Soon, Michael gave me a key to his penthouse apartment. I want to wake up next to you every day, he whispered. Moving in with him happened slowly. First, I left a toothbrush, then some clothes, and finally, my favorite books. Michael's apartment was very modern, with a lot of chrome, glass, and white leather furniture. My colorful pillows and books looked out of place. One evening, he looked at my collection of ceramic owls on his perfect coffee table and said, "Maybe my interior designer should help you fit your things in better." I laughed it off and moved the owls to the spare bedroom. It felt like a small compromise. After all, his apartment was much nicer than my old one, and it had huge windows with great natural light from my sketching. The first 6 months were wonderful. Michael would bring me coffee in bed, leave me nice notes when he traveled for work, and tell all his friends how great my designs were. If he sometimes interrupted me to correct a small detail or suggested I replace my favorite old sweater with something more fashionable, I didn't pay much attention. My own social life started to disappear as I spent more time at his charity events and corporate dinners. "You've changed," my friend Jess said during one of the few times we had lunch. "You used to be more lively." I got annoyed and told her I was just growing up and learning how to live in Michael's world, but deep down I knew I was changing. I was avoiding topics that made Michael tense, wearing the kinds of clothes he liked, and trying not to laugh too loudly at parties. It seemed worth it, especially when he told me how proud he was of me and talked about our future together. On our first anniversary, I was a big part of Michael's life. My old routines were a distant memory. My career was going great because of his support, and I was working on several big projects. Our relationship felt comfortable and settled. When he proposed to me on his yacht, I said yes without any hesitation. But there was one problem in our happy life: Michael's family. His mother, Eleanor, always looked at me with a critical eye. His father barely spoke to me except about work. Only his younger brother, Leo, was genuinely friendly. One night, after having a few drinks, he told me, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to Michael. He's becoming a better person because of you." 2 months after we got engaged, I started feeling tired and sick all the time. I thought it was just a stomach bug, but then Jess asked me when I had my last period. A home pregnancy test confirmed that I was pregnant. At first, I was scared, but then I felt incredibly happy. Michael and I hadn't talked specifically about having children, but he had mentioned wanting a family. I wanted to surprise him, so I bought a small silver picture frame that said "Baby Vance coming soon" and put it next to his dinner plate. But when he came home that night, he was in a bad mood. He was worried about a business deal in Beijing that wasn't going well. I decided it wasn't the right time to tell him my news, so I waited. The next day, I put a bottle of prenatal vitamins in our bathroom cabinet and went to work. When I came back, Michael was waiting for me with the bottle of vitamins in his hand. His face was cold and he had no expression. "What is this?" he asked, his voice like ice. I was so flustered by his anger that I could barely speak. "I was going to tell you last night," I stammered. "I'm pregnant, Michael. We're going to have a baby." His reaction was terrifying. He laughed, but it was a bitter, ugly sound. "How convenient," he said with a sneer. "The company is facing its first financial crisis in years, and now you're pregnant. Is this your way of making sure you have a secure future with the Vance family?" I was so confused and hurt. I took a step back and put my hand on my stomach. I hadn't planned this. His words were like a physical attack. It was hard to believe this was the same Michael who had comforted me all night when I lost a big project, the man who knew all of my dreams and fears. "You think I got pregnant to trap you?" My voice sounded strange, even to me. "I think your timing is suspiciously perfect," he said. He threw the vitamin bottle against the wall and it shattered, sending pink pills all over the clean floor. "We're not ready for a child. Take care of it." In that moment, Michael's handsome face changed completely. I suddenly saw through his charm, his generosity, and the control that I had thought was love. I saw a stranger, not the man I had agreed to marry. "There's nothing to take care of," I said quietly, feeling a new sense of strength. "This is our child." Michael's phone rang, and he answered it right away. His voice changed back to a professional tone as he talked about business, ignoring me completely as he walked into his office and shut the door. I knelt on the cold floor and started picking up the scattered vitamins, my eyes blurry with tears. How had I been so blind to who he really was? The Vance family meeting room felt as cold as a morgue, even though the spring sun was shining through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I sat alone on one side of a huge mahogany table, with my back straight and my hands folded over my still flat stomach. Across from me, the Vance family sat together, Richard and Eleanor in the middle, Michael to their right, and his younger brother, Leo, at the end of the table, looking down. Eleanor spoke first, tapping her perfect nails on the table. "Sarah, this situation is unfortunate, but it can be fixed." She slid a folded piece of paper across the table to me. I unfolded it without letting my hands shake. The number stood out. $250,000 to disappear from their lives and take care of the problem, as the document said. "You want me to terminate my pregnancy?" I asked, looking straight at Michael, but he wouldn't look at me. "We're offering a generous solution," Richard said, in the same commanding voice he used in business meetings. "Michael's engagement to Chloe Beaumont is a very important business alliance. A pregnancy would just complicate things." "Complicate things?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "We are talking about your grandchild here." Eleanor's lips formed a tight smile. "Dear, let's be practical. You're a career woman. A child would only slow you down, especially without the right support. We're just offering you freedom and money." I turned to Michael, hoping to see some sign of the man who had once cared about me. "Do you have anything to say?" "What is there to say?" Michael's voice was flat. "We made a mistake. My parents are offering a reasonable solution." The word mistake hung in the air. We had lived together for 8 months, and I thought we had been in love for a year and a half. All of that was just a mistake. I carefully folded the document. "I will not be accepting your offer, and I will not terminate my pregnancy." Richard's face grew dark. "Then you leave us no choice. We will have to protect our interests in other ways." I stood up, holding onto my dignity as if it were a shield. "I expected this to be hard, but I didn't expect this kind of cruelty, especially from you, Michael." As I walked to the door, Leo finally looked up. I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe regret, before he looked away again. The next morning at Vance Enterprises, I knew something was wrong as soon as I got off the elevator. People stopped talking. Coworkers who usually said hello suddenly got busy on their phones or with paperwork. The door to my office was open, and inside, David Cooper from HR was packing my personal things into a box. "What's happening?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. David wouldn't look at me. I'm sorry, Sarah. The Beijing project has been canceled and we're restructuring some departments. Your position has been eliminated. Restructuring? I said, feeling empty. What about my other projects? They've been reassigned. You'll get 3 months of severance pay. Of course. Just enough to make it look like they were being fair while making sure I couldn't afford to stay in the city for long. There was no point in arguing. The decision had been made at that same mahogany table. As I left with my box of belongings, Lisa Reeves, who had been my closest friend at work, passed me in the hallway without saying a word. She looked around nervously before whispering, I heard they're saying you misused client information. Nobody believes it, but nobody will go against the Vances. The message was clear. As I walked home, it started to rain, soaking my thin blazer. The doorman looked sad when he saw me. Miss Jenkins, I'm so sorry, he said, his eyes full of sympathy. Let me guess, I said. I'm not allowed to go up anymore. He nodded. Mr. Vance had the locks changed this morning. He pointed to a few cardboard boxes stacked in the corner of the lobby. 2 years of my life, all packed into 5 medium-sized boxes. My architecture books, my clothes, my ceramic owls. One of them now had a broken wing. I stood there, dripping water on the marble floor. The idea of being homeless was suddenly very real. The doorman handed me an umbrella. Take it, he said in a low voice. Mrs. Peterson in 5B asked me to give you her number if you came by. She said she might have a solution for you. Mrs. Peterson was a widow in her 70s who lived down the hall from Michael's penthouse. We had become friends after talking about her life as one of the first female stockbrokers on Wall Street. She had always refused Michael's offers to help with her groceries, saying, I'm not dead yet. 2 hours later, I was sitting in her cluttered apartment, drinking chamomile tea in a borrowed robe that smelled like lavender. Bastards, she said, after I told her my story. Rich boys never change. My second husband was just like that. Charming, until he wasn't. I don't know what to do, I said, as the shock of the day finally hit me. I'm pregnant, I don't have a job, and I'm homeless, all in one day. You'll stay in my guest room until you figure things out, she said with authority. The Vance family thinks their money makes them invincible. It makes me sick. That night, lying in Mrs. Peterson's guest bed, the reality of my situation finally sank in. My career, which I had built with my own talent, was ruined. My reputation was being destroyed. My savings would only last for about 3 months, and I was pregnant with a child who would need a stable home, care, and money that I no longer had. I let myself cry all night into a pillow that smelled like mothballs. The next morning, I made a plan. I called every architecture firm in the city. By the afternoon, it was clear that no one was hiring, especially not someone who had just left Vance Enterprises under mysterious circumstances. The next week was even harder. As I was climbing the stairs to Mrs. Peterson's apartment after another failed interview, I suddenly felt dizzy. The world started to spin, and the stairs became a blur. I grabbed the railing, but I still fell, sliding down several steps before I stopped at the landing. The hospital emergency room was bright and felt impersonal. A nurse with kind eyes checked my blood pressure, frowned, and immediately called for a doctor. Hypertension and dehydration, the doctor said later. It's common in pregnancy, but we need to keep an eye on it. Have you been under a lot of stress lately? I laughed until I started to cry. The doctor ordered an ultrasound to check on the baby. Alone in the dark examination room, I held my breath as the technician moved the wand over my stomach. A fast, whooshing sound filled the room, my baby's heartbeat, strong and steady. On the screen, I saw a tiny shape. It looked strange, but it was definitely a human. Would you like to know the sex? The technician asked. I nodded, desperate for some good news. It's a girl. A daughter, Michael's cruel words, "Take care of it," came back to me. This wasn't an it, this was our daughter. I suddenly felt a strong need to protect her. Everything looks healthy, the technician said. She's growing right on schedule. As I was getting ready to leave, I saw a familiar face in the doorway. It was Anna, the same woman who would later be a bridesmaid at Michael's wedding. She was wearing scrubs and looked surprised. Sarah, I thought I saw your name on the list of patients. You work here? I asked, confused. I'm a pediatric nurse. We met at the Vance Christmas party last year. Her eyes moved from my face to my chart and then back to my face with a new understanding. I'm pregnant, I said, suddenly feeling cautious. Does Michael know you work here? Michael? She seemed genuinely confused. Oh, no. I'm friends with Leo. We went to college together. She paused. Is everything okay? You're here by yourself, and your emergency contact is a Mrs. Peterson, not Michael. Something about her sincere concern made me let my guard down. Michael and I are not together anymore. He doesn't want the baby. Anna's professional look disappeared. That complete ass, she muttered, then looked embarrassed. Sorry, that was unprofessional. But accurate, I said, with a small smile. She wrote something on a piece of paper and gave it to me. This is my personal number. Call me if you need anything, a ride to an appointment, someone to talk to, anything. That night, I was scrolling through social media before going to bed, a habit I had picked up during my lonely evenings. I thought about the new friends I was making, each one giving me a little bit of hope. Then I saw Michael's face in a formal announcement from Vance Enterprises. It said that Michael Vance, the executive vice president, was engaged to Chloe Beaumont, the daughter of the CEO of Beaumont Banking Group. The announcement said the marriage would create a powerful partnership between the two companies. The date on the announcement showed it was posted just 3 weeks after I had told Michael I was pregnant. Chloe was wearing a huge diamond ring that looked like it had been specially made, the kind of ring that takes months to create. It hit me like a punch. He had been planning this all along. My pregnancy hadn't ruined his plans. It had just made him move faster. He hadn't just rejected me in a moment of panic. He had carefully gotten rid of me. In that moment, something inside me became very clear. This wasn't just about my broken heart anymore. It was about getting justice for me and for my daughter. You have a case, Miss Davies said, adjusting her glasses as she looked over my documents. Actually, you have several cases, she corrected. Her law office was very formal, a big change from the weeks I had spent hiding in Mrs. Peterson's apartment. I had found Miss Davies through a university alumni group. She specialized in employment discrimination and family law, which made her the perfect person to help me. I've organized everything by date, I explained, pointing to the tabs in my binder. Text messages, emails, work records, medical bills. Miss Davies nodded, looking pleased. Most clients bring me shoeboxes full of crumpled receipts. You've made my job easier. She tapped the results of the prenatal paternity test. It was smart to get this done early. This kind of test is safe for the baby and gives us legal proof of paternity. Michael's blood type was rare, and when the doctor told me my baby had the same genetic marker, I knew it would be important. Miss Davies looked at me thoughtfully. You've been very thorough, but fighting against powerful families is exhausting, both emotionally and financially. The Vances will not make this easy for you. I didn't come here because I thought it would be easy, I replied, putting a hand on my growing belly. I came for justice. Good, Miss Davies said with a sharp smile. Now, here's our plan. We wait. Wait for what? I asked, ready to argue. For Michael to marry Chloe Beaumont, she said, raising her hand to stop me from protesting. Trust me. Once that merger, the corporate one and the personal one, is complete, our position will be much stronger. Right now, the Vances could try to pressure Michael to marry you instead, to make it look like he's doing the right thing while making your life miserable behind the scenes. He wouldn't marry me now if I were the last woman on earth, I said. But his family might force him to protect their reputation. After the wedding, though, you become the woman who was wronged, carrying the grandchild they rejected. The public will be on your side, and the Beaumonts will be caught up in the scandal. That raises the stakes. I thought about her strategy. So we wait until after his wedding to file for paternity, child support, and the wrongful termination lawsuit? Exactly, Miss Davies confirmed, closing her notebook. In the meantime, write down everything, any contact, any threats, any rumors you hear about yourself, and find a more stable place to live. Mrs. Peterson's generosity is wonderful, but you need your own place before the baby comes. As I left her office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. We need to talk, it read. Not about getting back together. about the family. It was from Leo Vance. 3 days later, I was sitting across from Michael's younger brother in a quiet cafe far from the city center. Leo looked tired and not as polished as he usually did. "Thank you for meeting me," he started, sounding awkward. "I know you have every reason not to trust my family right now." "Why am I here, Leo?" I asked. He put a thumb drive on the table between us. "Because you deserve to know that this isn't the first time this has happened." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. Leo stared at his coffee, which he hadn't touched. "Did Michael ever tell you about our half-sister?" My confused look was enough of an answer. "I didn't think so," he continued, pushing the drive closer to me. 28 years ago, my father had an affair with his assistant. She got pregnant. The Vance family offered her money to go away. Unlike you, she took it." I picked up the drive, feeling cautious. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because history is repeating itself, and I'm tired of watching it happen," Leo said, finally looking at me. "These are copies of the original agreements, financial records of the payments, and photos of my half-sister, your daughter's aunt. She lives in Seattle now and has never met her father." "Does Michael know about this?" "He knows some version of the story. We were taught to believe she was just a mistake our father took care of." Leo's voice was bitter. "A mistake. Named Angela, who graduated from a top university and now runs her own successful graphic design company." The news was staggering. The Vances had been buying people's silence for a generation, and they would probably try to do the same with me, using even more aggressive methods. "There's something else you should know," Leo said, hesitating. "The company is in trouble. Bigger trouble than they're letting on. The Beaumont merger isn't just a good idea. It's necessary for the company to survive." So my pregnancy wasn't just a threat to Michael's relationship, it was a threat to the company's financial rescue plan. Leo nodded, and all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place with a sickening thud. My brother isn't just a coward, I realized. He's a desperate one. "Be careful, Sarah," Leo warned me as he left. I sat alone at the table, turning the thumb drive over in my hands. I now knew the deep, dark secrets of the Vance family. For the first time, I had some power. This fight was no longer just about child support. It was about taking down a family that used its wealth to erase people it found inconvenient. The following week, something good happened. Mrs. Peterson's neighbor, Paul Winters, a retired architect, heard about my situation and offered me some freelance work redesigning his daughter's restaurant. "It's nothing fancy," he said as he unrolled the floor plans on Mrs. Peterson's dining table. "But my daughter Sarah needs someone who can make the space both functional and beautiful. Your portfolio is very impressive." The project was small, but it paid in cash, which was exactly what I needed. I threw myself into the work, creating a space that was both efficient and attractive, even on a tight budget. Sarah was so happy with my designs that she recommended me to her friends, who were opening a community art center in a poor neighborhood. By the time I was 5 months pregnant, I had started a small but growing freelance business. The work kept me busy during the day, but at night it was hard to sleep. My daughter was very active, even at 3 in the morning, as if she was reminding me of what I was fighting for. During one of those sleepless nights, I started sketching a new idea: housing designed specifically for single parents. The designs had soundproofed bedrooms for sleeping babies, shared areas for childcare, and play spaces that could be seen from the kitchen. The more I sketched, the more excited I felt. The next morning, with a new burst of energy, I went to see Anna, who had become a good friend. "I need a nurse's opinion," I said, spreading my sketches out on her kitchen table. "Would these layouts actually work for parents with young children?" Anna looked at the designs carefully, suggesting practical improvements like wider doorways for strollers and built-in safety features. Her enthusiasm made me feel more confident. For the first time in months, I felt like the architect I used to be: creative, purposeful, and alive. "You should submit this to the Harlow Foundation's Urban Innovation Grant," Anna suggested. "Their deadline is next month, and this is exactly the kind of project they support." At first, I laughed at the idea. A pregnant, unemployed architect with no company to back her up was not their usual applicant. But Anna insisted. "That's exactly why you should apply. Your unique perspective is what makes this design special. Encouraged by Anna's words, I started working on the grant application. It gave me something to focus on besides freelance projects, doctor's appointments, and meetings with my lawyer. I developed my vision for what I called nest housing, a concept that addressed the unique challenges single parents face. The day I submitted the application, Mrs. Peterson handed me a cream-colored envelope that had been delivered to her apartment. "It's thick and looks official," she said with a suspicious look. Inside was an invitation to Michael and Chloe's wedding, addressed to Miss Sarah Jenkins, Vance Enterprises. They hadn't even updated their employee list. There was also a handwritten note from Eleanor Vance. "Sarah, Michael insists that we maintain professional courtesies, despite our personal differences. Your attendance is neither expected nor encouraged." The words didn't hurt as much as I thought they would, but what really caught my attention was the date. The wedding was just 3 weeks away, which matched the fast timeline Miss Davies had talked about. That evening, I called my lawyer. "I received a wedding invitation today," I told Miss Davies. "Perfect," she replied. "This proves they're keeping up the appearance that you left for professional reasons, not because of discrimination." "I want to go," I said, an idea forming in my head. After a moment of silence, Miss Davies questioned my decision. "Not to cause a scene," I explained, "for closure, and to gather any final evidence before we file our case." Before she could argue, my phone beeped with another call. It was Leo. "Sarah, I need to warn you. Michael hired a private investigator to follow you. They're looking for anything they can use to ruin your reputation before any legal action." A cold anger washed over me. "Then we'll give them something to see." The weeks before the wedding were a blur. Miss Davies prepared our legal documents while I finished my grant application and took on 2 more design projects. My body was changing quickly and my daughter was growing stronger every day, a constant reminder of why I couldn't give up. Anna and Mrs. Peterson became my support system. Anna went with me to doctor's appointments when she could, and Mrs. Peterson's connections helped me find a small apartment in a safe neighborhood that I wouldn't have been able to afford otherwise. "It belongs to my niece," Mrs. Peterson explained as she gave me the keys. "She's in Europe for a year and would rather have someone trustworthy here than leave it empty." The apartment was small but sunny, with a second bedroom that was perfect for a nursery. On moving day, Anna showed up with paint samples and a determined look on her face. "Your daughter deserves a beautiful room," she said, "and you need a project that has nothing to do with the Vances." We spent the weekend turning the spare room into a nursery. We painted clouds on the ceiling and filled the bookshelves with children's books that Anna had collected from hospital book drives. For the first time since I left Michael's penthouse, I felt a spark of the future I was fighting for. I felt at home. As we stood back to admire our work, Anna, who had been avoiding the question for months, finally asked, "Have you decided on a name?" I put my hands on my swollen belly and felt my daughter's familiar kicks. "Lily," I said with confidence. "It means purity and beauty, things I hope she'll bring into the world." "Her mother is the strongest person I know," Anna replied quietly. "Lily will be lucky to have you." The night before Michael's wedding, I laid out my clothes, a simple navy dress that fit my 7-month belly but still looked dignified. Ms. Davies had arranged for a trusted colleague to go with me for both emotional support and as a legal witness. My phone rang. It was Leo again. "Sarah, be careful tomorrow. Michael knows you got an invitation. He's convinced you're going to make some kind of scene." I laughed softly. The Vances always underestimated me. "Tell me something, Leo. Does Chloe know about me? About the baby?" His hesitation was all the answer I needed. "She knows Michael had a serious girlfriend who became difficult. I don't think she knows the rest." "I see. Thank you for the warning." As I hung up the phone, I felt surprisingly calm. Tomorrow wasn't about revenge or public humiliation. It was about witnessing the end of one chapter so that another one could begin. A chapter where my daughter and I would write our own story, free from the toxic influence of the Vance family. The morning after Michael's wedding was bright and clear. It was a perfect spring day that felt like it was mocking the storm inside me. I sat in Miss Davies's office and watched her organize documents into neat piles while her assistant made copies. Are you sure about this? Miss Davies asked, not for the first time. Once we file, there's no turning back. The publicity alone will be intense. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. Michael is on his honeymoon in the Maldives. Eleanor and Richard are busy with post-wedding parties and merger announcements. They're distracted and overconfident. It's the perfect time. Miss Davies straightened the edges of our legal complaint. The paternity suit by itself would be big news. But combined with the wrongful termination and discrimination claims, this becomes a corporate ethics scandal. The timing, right after their merger announcement, couldn't be worse for them. They chose the timing, not me, I replied, remembering the cold look in Eleanor's eyes when she offered me the buyout. They had every chance to do the right thing. An hour later, it was done. 3 separate lawsuits were filed against Michael personally and against Vance Enterprises as a company. Miss Davies' assistant had already sent press packages to journalists who specialized in corporate ethics. By that evening, the story would be everywhere. I walked out of the law office into the sunshine. I put one hand on my belly where Lily was kicking energetically. "It's done, little one," I whispered. "Now we focus on our future, not their past." My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the Harlow Foundation. They wanted to interview me about my nest housing concept. The grant committee had some questions, but they were interested in my new approach to housing for single parents. The interview was scheduled for the following week, which was perfect timing. It would give me something else to focus on besides the media storm that was about to hit. By nightfall, the story had broken. "Vance heir abandons pregnant fiancée weeks before Beaumont merger," screamed one headline. "Architect claims pregnancy discrimination at city's largest developer," read another. My phone was flooded with messages from old colleagues, acquaintances, and even classmates from college I hadn't talked to in years. I turned it off, made myself a cup of chamomile tea, and focused on my presentation for the Harlow Foundation. Let the Vances deal with the press. I had a future to build. 3 days later, Anna burst into my apartment, her eyes wide. "Have you seen this?" she asked, holding up her tablet. The headline on a business news site made my heart stop. "Beaumont banking questions Vance merger amid ethics concerns." "Chloe's father is furious that they weren't told about the paternity suit before the wedding," Anna explained. "Sources say he's rethinking the merger, and he might even pull out completely." I should have felt happy, maybe even triumphant. But instead, I just felt empty. "This was never about destroying their business," I said quietly. "It was just about justice for Lily." "Well, you might get both," Anna replied, putting down her tablet to help me organize fabric samples for my presentation. "Leo called me this morning. He says the office is in chaos. Michael is flying back early from his honeymoon." I was about to respond when there was a sharp knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw a face I had hoped to never see again. It was Michael. He was still tan from his interrupted vacation, but his face was a mix of anger and something that looked like fear. "I know you're in there, Sarah," he called out, knocking again. "We need to talk, now." Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but I kept the security chain on. "My lawyer advised me not to speak with you directly," I said. Michael looked terrible. His expensive clothes were wrinkled and his eyes were red. "Your lawyer?" he scoffed. "Is that what this is about? Money? How much will it take for you to drop these ridiculous lawsuits and stop ruining my life?" I was so stunned by his audacity that I couldn't speak for a moment. Anna stepped up behind me. "You should leave, Michael. Sarah has nothing to say to you." His eyes narrowed when he saw her. "Anna, what are you doing here?" Then he realized. "You've been helping her all along, haven't you? Does my brother know his old college friend is betraying the family?" "Leo knows exactly where my loyalties are," Anna replied coldly. "Now leave before I call the police." "This isn't over," Michael hissed, pointing a finger at me. "You think you've won? You think anyone will hire you after I'm done with you? You're nothing without the Vance name, Sarah. Nothing." An unexpected laugh escaped me. "That's where you're wrong, Michael. I was someone long before I met you, and I'll be someone long after you're gone. You're just a bad chapter in my life." As I started to close the door, I added, "Oh, and by the way, your daughter's name is Lily, not that you asked." The door clicked shut on his stunned face. I leaned against it, my heart pounding, until Anna gently guided me to the couch. Are you okay? She asked. I nodded, surprised to find that it was true. Actually, yes. For the first time in months, I think I really am. The Harlow Foundation interview the following week went better than I could have imagined. The committee was especially interested in the psychological research I had used in my design, like how the layout of a space could encourage community while still giving people privacy, and how smart architecture could make life easier for single parents. Miss Jenkins, the committee chair, said at the end of the interview, "Your personal experience has clearly shaped this design in a powerful way. We'd like to invite you to the final selection round, which includes a public presentation next month." I felt like I was floating on air as I left their offices. My work, not my connection to the Vances, not my personal drama, had earned me this opportunity. On the sidewalk outside, I almost ran into Natalie Winters, a famous architect whose firm had rejected my job applications twice after I left Vance Enterprises. "Sarah?" she said, recognizing me. I prepared myself for an awkward conversation, but she smiled warmly. "I've been following your situation. That took a lot of courage." "Thank you," I replied cautiously. "I also saw your name on the Harlow shortlist," she said, handing me her business card. "When you're ready to go back to work at a firm, after your maternity leave, of course, I'd like to talk to you about some possibilities. Your housing concepts are a perfect fit for our new community development division." The job market, which had seemed completely closed to me, was suddenly opening up. By the end of the week, I had received 3 more inquiries from firms that had previously ignored me. Miss Davies called with updates on settlement offers from Vance Enterprises. Each one was higher than the last, and we rejected them all. "They're getting desperate," she explained. "The Beaumont merger is about to fall apart, and their stock has dropped 15%. We have all the power now." 2 weeks after we filed the lawsuits, Leo asked for a meeting. He came to the neutral coffee shop Miss Davies had chosen, looking exhausted but determined. "I've been asked to negotiate for the family," he explained. "My father had a minor heart episode last week. It was stress-related." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want Richard to suffer. Leo slid a folder across the table. "This is our final offer. Full financial support for Lily through college. Your old job back at the company. Or an equivalent severance package. A public acknowledgement of paternity and," he hesitated, "a formal apology." I looked at the documents carefully. The financial terms are acceptable. The job is unnecessary. I've accepted a partnership offer somewhere else. But the apology needs to be more specific, not just for the pregnancy discrimination, but for the campaign to ruin my professional reputation. Leo nodded and made some notes. "There's something else." He took a small velvet box out of his briefcase. "This belonged to our grandmother. Michael was going to give it to Chloe before all this happened. I think it should go to Lily as a reminder that she does have family, even if some of us took too long to act like it." Inside was a beautiful gold locket with the Vance family crest, a family heirloom. "Leo, Please," he interrupted. "I'm not asking for a relationship now. Just for the possibility that someday when she's older, Lily might know that there was at least one Vance who wanted to do the right thing from the beginning." The settlement was finalized 3 days later. Michael's acknowledgement of paternity and the company's admission of wrongdoing made the news. But the stories were smaller than the initial scandal. By then, I was focused on other things: the Harlow presentation, setting up my new office at Winters Architecture, and getting ready for Lily's birth. She arrived 2 weeks early on a stormy summer night. Anna held my hand through 15 hours of labor while Mrs. Peterson paced in the waiting room, bothering the nurses for updates. When the doctor finally placed my daughter in my arms, 7 pounds of perfection, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that would later turn my own shade of brown, the world seemed to stop. "Hello, Lily," I whispered, counting her tiny fingers. "We made it." I could see traces of Michael in her face, a reminder that the Vance family line would continue, despite their best efforts. But I could also see myself, my mother, and my own determination in her tiny features. Lily would grow up knowing she was loved, surrounded by strength. She was wanted, chosen, and fought for, not an inconvenient mistake to be gotten rid of with money. 1 year later, I was standing in the front yard of our new home, a beautiful house that I had designed myself. The Harlow Grant had funded the first Nest Community Housing Project, which was now being built across town. My partnership at Winters Architecture gave me the flexibility to be a mother and still do meaningful work. Lily, who was now taking her first steps on the grass, had all the security and love I had fought so hard for. As I watched her toddle toward me, her arms outstretched and her face full of joy, I saw a black car slow down at the end of our driveway. Through the tinted window, I saw Michael's profile. He looked older, maybe a little wiser after a year of legal battles, a divorce, and corporate problems. Our eyes met for a moment. He looked at Lily, perhaps realizing what he had lost. I didn't wave or do anything more than acknowledge him. After a few seconds, the car drove on and disappeared around the corner. As I turned back to my daughter and clapped as she made it into my open arms. Behind us, workers were putting the final window in my home office, a huge wall of glass that looked out onto the backyard playground I had designed so I could work and watch Lily at the same time. "We did it, little one," I whispered into her soft hair. "We built something better than what we lost." As if she understood, Lily patted my cheek with her small hand, her smile giving me all the victory I would ever need. The Vance name might have once opened doors, but it was our own strength that had built this new life, a life where the past couldn't define us. Outside the window, the foundation was being poured for the first phase of the Nest project. Real proof that, sometimes, the things that are meant to destroy us can become the very materials we use to build our greatest accomplishments.